His beginnings could hardly have been more humble, his expectations more limited. Born at around 4:30 in the morning of January 8, 1935, in a two-room shack in Tupelo, Mississippi, a couple of oil lamps provided the only light, and a log stove boiled the necessary water. 30 minutes later, a twin brother followed, Elvis Aaron and Jesse Guerin. Their names had already been chosen, but Jesse was stillborn. The young parents, Vernon and Gladys Presley, had expected twins. They were in both of their families, but they hadn't been able to afford the cost of medical help when Gladys was pregnant. A doctor had only been called by a neighbor when Gladys began having complications with the birth. His fee was $15. It would be paid by a charity. Jesse was buried in an unmarked grave in the Priceville Cemetery in Tupelo a day or so later, but by this time Gladys, who had lost a lot of blood, had been taken, with her surviving baby, to a hospital. When Elvis was older, he would wonder if he and Jesse had been identical twins, and why his brother had died, and not him. Because, as they told him in church, there had to be a reason for everything. Sometimes he used to imagine the two of them as brothers, playing happily together. Then at other times, perhaps, he would worry that they may have been rivals like Cain and Abel in the Bible. On a couple of occasions after he became famous, he asked people to try to find out exactly which plot of land Jesse had been buried in at the cemetery, but they never could. No papers marked the spot. He was sometimes told that when one twin dies, the survivor grows up with all the additional qualities of the other. His mother encouraged him to think that, to believe that he was special. She was convinced that he was special. Tupelo, Mississippi, then, as now, the poorest state in the Union, was a scabby little town of about 6,000 people in the 30s, and the Presleys' little home was a frame house on blocks with no electricity and no running water on a dirt road above the creek and highway, close to the woods and farms. At school, Elvis was told that Tupelo was the Choctaw Indian name for that area, and in the 30s, there were quite a number of Presleys in and around Tupelo. There was quite a lot of religion, too. So it was unsurprising that his parents, Vernon Presley and Gladys Smith, had first met at the Pentecostal First Assembly of God Church in East Tupelo. Gladys was the fourth of 9 children. Her mother, Doll Smith, was a long-term, semi-professional invalid, and as a girl, Gladys looked after her, in addition to taking care of her younger brothers and sisters. Doll died the year after Elvis was born, and her husband, Bob Smith, followed soon afterward. He'd been a sharecropper, taking his family from farm to farm in the neighborhood looking for work. The local gossip said that Bob did a little moonshine on the side to try to make ends meet, but they never did meet. The Smiths seemed predisposed to die young. Vernon's father was Jesse D. Presley, who, the rest of the family would say, was a good-looking, bad-tempered, womanizing, hard-drinking man who did some farming and who gave teenage Vernon some tough years in the 30s. Jesse's wife, Minnie Mae, Elvis's grandmother, a long, lean woman, had some bad times with him, too. He left her before Elvis knew him, so she went to live with her son Vernon and his wife Gladys and their boy. Elvis always called her Dodger, after she once dodged a baseball he'd accidentally thrown in her direction. Vernon, who liked to joke that he'd been raised on a cotton patch, had been only 17 when, just a couple of months after they met, he and Gladys, then 22, had run away to the next county to get married. That was in 1933. They both lied about their age, making him older and Gladys younger on their marriage license. She was working in the Tupelo Garment Center at the time, sitting at a sewing machine for $2 a day, while Vernon did whatever work he could find. It was the Depression, so that wasn't easy. Once married, they lived with Vernon's parents for a little while, and then borrowed $180 from a local moneylender called Orville Bean to build a house next door to the older Presleys on an empty lot that Bean owned. Vernon had done some work as a carpenter, so he put the house up himself, with help from his father and a brother.